Welcome into sportsbookreview.com. This is the college football show with Gary and
Chris.
This is our first one here on SBR. We appreciate everybody that's jumping in. Of course, we're a little bit late. We want to apologize for that. We had a few technical difficulties, but we are set up now. We are good to go, and we've got some fantastic topics. Before we begin, though, if you would, do us a favor. Click the like button, the thumbs up, whatever you want to call it. Go ahead and knock that out. Go over to sbrpicks.com/CFB. You can find more information from us. And Sportsbook Review will keep you up to date if you are subscribed on the channel or if you go check out the website on everything else that's going on in the college football world and the entire sports world. So go check it out, sportsbookreview.com or sbrpicks.com/CFB. Chris, yesterday we had the SEC full schedule come out for fall 2020, and I was absolutely ecstatic about it. Give me your first impressions, and then we're going to talk about the best weekends along with maybe the toughest stretch of games, et cetera, et cetera. What was your first impression?
Well, we knew who all the players were going to be. We knew what the teams were going to be. They already announced that. Now it's just when the games are going to be played. And it looks like they tried to keep the traditional rivalries late in the season, but not the last week of the season. I'm guessing in case, things get bad late, they can kind of punt on the season and not worry about those games. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for the Iron Bowl, if you're looking for some of your bigger rivalry games, they're going to be at the back end of the season where they normally are. I wonder how that's going to affect the way the season's going to look when you've got classic divisional foes. And if things get bad early and we don't get the full season in, are we going to regret that we didn't get those games, but we got LSU Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I agree. I will say this. The first week was a lot of cross-division games. You have Alabama at Missouri. You've got Arkansas, Georgia, Auburn, Kentucky, stuff like that. Now, LSU, Mississippi State is scheduled. That's a division game. But there's a whole lot of, other things that are a little weird with this schedule. You've got some strange stretches of games, and we'll go ahead and go through some of the best weekends here. Let's go ahead and talk about October the 3rd, which is the second weekend. So the first one, you got a few duds and whatnot, but the second weekend, October 3rd, you got Texas A&M, Alabama, and you got Auburn at Georgia. Now, they talked about moving this game from November to a little bit earlier, but man, the second game of the season here, which we understand it's a condensed season, it's only 10 games and whatnot, but that is a crazy kind of rivalry to have in the second week of the season. What do you think happens here?
I'm good with that. I'm actually happy about it. This game, I think, is the most important game in the SEC because it's the longest running rivalry in the SEC. I actually think if we care anything about getting a historical game in, this is the one that's been played more than any other. And so it has to make sure it goes off. And that was my concern with if they did divisional games early, which they obviously didn't do that, just to make sure they got the division in, then could we possibly lose the Auburn-Georgia matchup? And we're not. We're pretty much guaranteed to get that one. And so I'm actually really excited about it, and I was pleased to see it was so early.
Same here. Now, you can move on to the third weekend. In that one, Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida at Texas A&M is a big one. But we're going to go on and move to October 17th, and you've got Georgia at Alabama and LSU at Florida. Those are two absolutely monster games this season for both division races. Those are the ones that are predicted to be 1-2 in both divisions. Are you kind of surprised that it's week 4 that they're knocking that out that early?
No, I think this was CBS's request to we're going to get the doubleheader, and we want to make sure we get it in. If we do it in the first 4 weeks, we think we're guaranteed to get it in. And that's I think our TV partners from the SEC had a lot to do with this pairing right there.
You might be right about that. There's not another weekend with 2 games that are bigger than that. I mean, it's not even close.
And you've got a couple of weekends like the first weekend where there's really not a great matchup. So there would have been plenty of opportunities to spread them out. I think that was calculated.
You might be right. You might be right about that. Now, there are a lot of really good games throughout. I don't know that there's any more that CBS would want to do a doubleheader on. I think that's the one. I think you're dead on about that. You can talk about October 24th and October 31st. There's a lot of, open dates on those weekends. That's when everybody's going to try and fill in if there are games missed. Those will be the weekends that everybody tries to fit them in, right? So you do have Arkansas, Texas A&M. You do have Alabama, Mississippi State on the 24th. On the 31st, you've got Georgia and Florida. There's a lot there. Excuse me, that's October 31st and November 14th. Or November 7th. Man, my dates are all messed up. You guys are going to learn as you go along. We will eventually get it right. But every now and then we can screw these numbers up. And the weeks are just going to be insane because with the ACC starting a different schedule, with the Big 12 starting at a different time, there's not going to be a week 1, week 2, week 3 anymore. The SEC is set up for week 1 on September 26th. College football is all kinds of crazy this year, but we're going to have fun with it. So November 7th is Florida, Georgia. That is a week later than Halloween. And, that's typically when that game falls, roundabout. You surprised they're still doing this game in Jacksonville?
No, why would that matter?
I'm curious about the fans and whatnot. I think it would have been strange if they had Florida, Georgia anywhere but here, because
the issue is going to be one of them's not going to want the other one to have home field advantage. One of them is not going to want to play in that visitor locker room.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
That's what you get here.
Well, because you would never get the game back.
Right.
It's always going to be in Jacksonville. So we'll move on. The next two biggest ones, and maybe the biggest outside of a rivalry weekend, is going to be November 14th. You've got Alabama LSU, and that is the marquee game. Alabama LSU is a monster game. It's in Baton Rouge this year.
And it has been for the last, 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely has been. In this situation, it'll be the first time Alabama's looked for revenge since 2011. A long time. And by that point, if things are looking a little better, if we have gotten to that point in the season, could we potentially have fans in the stands in Baton Rouge?
I would like to think so. I don't know that we're going to have enough fans for it to make a difference. I don't think that you're going to be seeing 80-something thousand strong in Tiger Stadium at all this year. I just don't see that happening. I'd love for it to. I'd love for us to be that far along, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely see. I do see where earlier today Alabama said that they are going to have 20% capacity, which will be a little over 20,000. But that can change if things improve as the season goes along. I would imagine LSU will do the same thing. We should have fans throughout the SEC for opening weekend, and we'll figure that out. Rivalry weekend, of course, November 28th. You've got Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Florida, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama. The only one that's a little strange here is Kentucky, Florida. That one typically is an early season game. I like having it this late in the season. You feel the same way?
No, I could care less if I could.
You don't care about that one.
I could care less.
Well, I can understand it. Look, there's a lot there. LSU A&M obviously is going to be a really good game this year, we think. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. You've got Leach. You got Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, this is the Egg Bowl week, and I'm excited about this week.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not going to be on Thanksgiving, from what I understand. It's all these games are going to be on Saturdays. We're not going to have any weeknight games. They will all be Saturdays throughout this season. And then usually rivalry week is the last week of the regular season. This year, not so. December 5th, they are still going to have, it's a full slate of games. But that last week on December 5th, when you're supposed to have the SEC championship game, you will have Mississippi State, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. You'll have Alabama, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Auburn. This is
Tennessee, Florida being this late is a big deal. I think. I was shocked. This is the one that I was shocked at because that game. As Tennessee continues to improve, we think that game's going to keep mattering more than it has, right?
I would think so. I think Tennessee, they've got a pretty tough slate here. So I don't think they will be in the division race, but
But they could be a spoiler for Florida.
They could absolutely.
You don't think that would be a Super Bowl for them?
But Tennessee gets Vanderbilt the week before that, and Florida has to deal with Kentucky the week before that. Now, not that Kentucky's great, but Kentucky is definitely not Vanderbilt. So it could be a little crazy. Obviously, we will do an SEC preview, and we'll go over win totals and our outlook for every team in the conference going forward. We'll do that later on this week. It will be up on the site at some point very, very soon, now that we have a full schedule. But we were incredibly excited about that. From there, let's go ahead and talk about the other topic we wanted to hit on today, and that would be what in the world is happening with the Big Ten. Now, they canceled, and Chris, I'm going to get you in here in just a second, but I want to roll through a little bit of a timeline and kind of go through exactly what has happened, and then I'm going to ask you a very specific question, okay? First off, they canceled a week ago today. It was Tuesday, August the 11th. Now, from there, over the weekend, you had Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, and Nebraska, the parents of the players at those schools, all send letters to the Big Ten office saying that we want our kids to play. And it was a very united front, right? Justin Fields, quarterback at Ohio State, he starts a petition. It has already gotten, as of today, as of 5 minutes before we went live, over 273,000 signatures on this online petition. And it just went up yesterday morning. And that is a massive number. So from there, you also had yesterday Penn State AD Sandy Barber, who said that she is not even sure that they ever had a vote over whether or not to cancel the season. Like, somebody just said it and everybody was like, okay, I guess. And nobody ever came out against it. Now, along with the fact that Governor Mike DeWine in Ohio announced today that the state of Ohio is going to have high school football. They're going to have NFL football, but they can't play college football. In the state of Iowa, Iowa State is playing football in the Big 12, but the Iowa Hawkeyes can't. And in the state of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh is playing football, but Penn State can't. Do you think that there is a shot, because these schools are still practicing, because they've still got the 20 hours a week thing going on, is there a shot that they could come back and reinstate the season based on all of these things that we know now, along with, hey, I didn't even mention this. There were multiple cardiologists, multiple different scientists that came out and completely debunked the paper that the Big Ten used. All of that data was flawed that they used to say that they needed to cancel the season. Is there a chance that they come back and reinstate this season, or is there just too much pride involved here?
So therein lies the issue. We live in a world now where once somebody says something, they care more about them being right than doing the right thing. They care more about them actually being proven right. And so, no, I don't think so. I don't think there's any way on earth, and I think it's going to be completely exactly what you said. It's all about ego. It's all about pride.
That's what I was worried about. Now, I am a little
I'm going to tell you this. They're going to look bad, because if we get 3 to 4 weeks into college football and the 3 other Power 5 conferences are playing and are having no issues at all, they are going to look really bad. And it is going to I think it's going to hurt them for years in recruiting.
You might be right.
Because that's going to be used against them when getting big-time players. Ohio State will probably still be able to pull kids, but I think it'll put a gap between Ohio State and the teams in the South that they're competing with.
Oh, yes. Because Ohio State has been known to go into Florida and Texas and wherever. And
I don't think they're taking those kids anymore. I think every school around is going to come up and say, man, can you trust that conference?
That's a really good question. I mean, we've talked about this before, but, the commissioner of the Big Ten, Kevin Warren, his son plays at Mississippi State.
And he's going to play.
He's going to play. And
he has said publicly, I think he's safe to play.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you this. I have tried to do a good job on this. Was not Warren's decision.
Agreed.
Everybody needs to understand this was the president of these schools' decision. Everyone's putting it at the feet of Warren because he's the commissioner, but he doesn't control the schools.
That is true. The presidents control all of that. Warren is just a hired gun for the president.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it goes. But it is a bad look. I will admit that, when his own son is playing football in the SEC and none of the other kids in that conference that he is the commissioner of can play. So I do have another question for you.
Okay.
If we do end up having a full fall season for the 3 power conferences and even some of these G5 conferences, does that make it more likely or less likely that we end up getting a spring season with the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the MAC, and the Mountain West?
I think it'll be more likely because they're going to want to get some kind of revenue and some kind of game in, even though your Justin Fields and your NFL-bound guys are probably going to sit out, but they're still going to want some type of television revenue.
I think you might be right about that. I've heard so many different takes on this about the health and well-being of the students, and if that's why you cancel the fall season, then there's absolutely no way. And there are offshore odds on whether or not they will have a spring season. And
nobody really cares about the health and well-being of these kids.
That's kind of where
we understand that, right? We're wise enough to look behind the veil and realize none of these schools actually care about that. They care about litigation. They care solely about liability. That's it.
Yeah, that's the whole reason why those conferences canceled in the first place, and they will tell you a whole lot of different things. Chris and I have discussed this a lot. The reason that we want college football, the reason we want high school football, NFL, etc., it is a normal thing. When you get people out of a normal tendency, bad things happen. They just do. I mean, if you look at some of the latest data, some of the surveys and whatnot that have come out, 1 in 4 teenagers since this quarantine began, and it's not just but up to college age, right? College age kids, 1 out of 4 has contemplated suicide since the beginning of the pandemic. That is absurd.
It's sad.
Unheard of. And really sad. And it's because you take away that social aspect that they are so used to. They can't go to school. You can't go hang out with your friends. You can't go play football. You can't go work out. You can't do this and that. You can't. And at some point, what is the purpose?
Why?
Right?
Why? What? That's going to sound, but like, and this is an extreme saying, but what is life worth living if you can't live it?
Yeah.
So yes, sure, you live to be 94 if you never leave your couch. If you wake up every day and you eat your vegetables and you do push-ups and you do your sit-ups and you never leave the safety of your house, but you live to be the ripe old age of 103, what life is that?
Well, I mean, as long as they're watching SBR, I think it'd be all right. But you know, either way, I am curious to see what is going to happen here because I don't believe that they will have a spring season. And if we get through a fall season and they realize that they have left so much money on the table, I'm curious what they're going to try and do. Will you try?
If we get through a fall season, they'll have enough data to show they were wrong. And then they'll make the decision of, we think this is safer than what y'all did. We're going to do this.
We shall see. We shall see. All right. That is going to wrap up today's show. If you will, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, give a like on the video. It's a thumbs up right there at the bottom. We would appreciate that. We will be doing this every Tuesday and Thursday for the foreseeable future at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. We have got all of our kinks worked out. We were late today. We won't be in the future. We can guarantee that. We'll go ahead and put it on paper, write it in ink. We will be here. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Give us a like. Share the show out. Tell your friends about it. And we will see all of you again very, very soon. Go to sbrpicks.com/CFB. Everybody have a good afternoon.